As gaming progresses, each year there are more and more prestige video games being released and awarded with critical acclaim and accolades. Whether it be The Ghost of Tsushima, Red Dead Redemption 2, The Walking Dead, or The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, all these games have pushed the bounds of immersive storytelling in their own way and come with a certain set of expectations from the audience. Many of these games are getting mainstream film or TV adaptations, further exemplifying the narrative prowess of the video game industry. But in terms of the relationship between the audience and the content, there is a unique case that has been in the spotlight recently, a game called The Last of Us 2. Released in 2013 by Naughty Dog, The Last of Us was a smash hit, becoming one of the most widely sold and awarded video games of all time, selling 1.3 million copies in the first week and over 17 million through April 2018. Central to its success was the emotional bond forged by the players to the characters and the utilization of the idea of player agency, which is unique to the video game medium. Players played as Joel, who was charged with taking care of a young girl, Ellie, in an apocalyptic setting after losing his own daughter. Ellie doesn't have a family, and neither does Joel. The game was filled with interactive moments where Joel would save Ellie, or Ellie would save Joel, and included cutscenes of their interaction among themselves and other characters. Spending a 15 to 20 hour game physically driving the characters through obstacles and protecting a young girl who needed help created a sense of attachment to these characters. The concept of a flow state, the total immersion of someone in an activity, was integral in allowing the players to become invested in the story. The scholar Genova Chen references Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi on flow, reciting his 8 components of a flow state, one of them being a challenging activity requiring skill, and another, direct concentration on the task at hand. A video game creates a unique sense of flow compared to traditional media. The game director Neil Druckmann describes the special aspect of games as such. When you're playing a character, you connect with them at this very subconscious level. I don't even know how to articulate it. You hear people say, "I am Joel." This direct connection between user to character is what establishes such a deep bond to the text. The game was highly acclaimed, with critics praising the unique and innovative story-driven gameplay, the actors' performances, and the sound design. The accolades spoke for themselves. This dynamic worked, and the game and its characters were deeply beloved by the community surrounding it. Then, June of 2020, after being previously teased, the long-awaited sequel came out. The release was a rocky one, with critics given early access to the game and lauding the technicalities of it along with the performances, but expressing weariness over the intensely brutal and grueling nature of this 20 to 30 hour game. In the weeks leading up to the game's release, hackers had unearthed a cutscene of Joel's savage death and published it online. This piece of information was definitely a critical moment in the story. A large number of fans were outraged that this beloved character had been killed so early in the game. He was the audience's perspective in the first game, and the foundation on which the relationship between player and characters had been built. To show the disappointment in how the game creator and studio betrayed their trust, they took to Twitter to hurl cruel and racist remarks at those involved. The negative response due to the leak was overwhelming and almost overshadowed the game's actual release. But it also begged the question, what were they so upset about? The Last of Us 2 certainly challenged the player emotionally, with wicked consequences to the decisions made by the characters in the first game and vicious gameplay. Neil Druckmann said the first game was about love, and he wanted the second game to center on hate. He acknowledged the online response, but also reaffirmed his stance on creating the game he wanted to create. A comparison can be drawn to the final season of Game of Thrones, which also sparked severe audience criticism and pushback. There were certainly those that enjoyed the game and the last season of Thrones, but their voices were overwhelmed by this highly vocal group that felt as though the creator had wronged them and misrepresented the characters that they knew according to each of their respective fandoms. The idea of a fandom encompasses many different things, but as a whole it speaks to the notion that a group of people have established a community around their love for something. In this case, it would be the love for the game. They themselves feel a sense of ownership over the text being the original The Last of Us, and that ownership extends over to the sequel in the series. Leslie Goodman writes in her article, Disappointing Fans, Fandom's Fictional Theory and the Death of the Author, on the use of fanfiction as a corrected piece for the original text when the fans feel as though the author hadn't done the story or characters justice. In the case of this game, the audience's corrective measure was review bombing and nasty online remarks. The medium of video games is an interesting one for this reason. The player can feel much more attached to characters because of the nature of what a game is, user control, but at the same time the player doesn't have a choice in how the story will unfold. Characters will die as the director wants them to, and characters will do or say things that the player might not agree with. The ending of the game is another point of contention among the audience. After at least 25 hours of slugging your way through and killing enemy after enemy, Ellie finds Joel's murderer at her most vulnerable state, and she lets her go. Of course, the game has just spent countless hours giving you both sides of the story, but still the audience felt betrayed by this. Cutting through the senseless negativity outside the scope of the game's narrative, the audience had mixed feelings about this aspect of forgiveness. Did Abby the murderer deserve to be allowed to live? Would Ellie actually do this? Was this true to her character? Neil Druckmann thought so. But who understands these characters more? The audience or the creator? To answer my original question, why was the audience so upset over a game? The simple answer would be because they felt wronged. Clearly, these angry former fans once loved the series, but they felt the author had done something that went against what they knew of the characters. Where is the line drawn between giving the audience what they want and what the creators envision? Who has the correct perspective on this work? This game was years in the making, and to dismiss such a monumental effort over the fact that a beloved character meets a gruesome end isn't fair. The Last of Us 2 is a story about anger, hatred that motivates these characters to act in horribly barbaric ways, but it is also a story about forgiveness and empathy. The Last of Us 2 can be used as a case study on audience entitlement and perceived ownership over a text. The narrative could be sufficiently complex and well thought out, but if the audience doesn't feel like it's fair, like it's authentic and true to the characters, then what is its value to them? Should the creator make art to serve the audience or even consider meeting their expectations? There is a balance in all this, and there were certainly fans of the sequel. The bitter tweets have died down over time, overcome by praise of the game's daring story, but left in its wake is the realization that for some fans, these characters are more than just pieces of a video game.